What if the pain you keep carrying isn't actually coming from people, situations, or the past, but from your inability to emotionally let go? Not because you're weak, but because nobody ever taught you how. Stay with me until the end, because the final lessons will completely change the way you see attachment, relationships, and your own inner power. Today, I want to share 7 life lessons about emotional detachment, not as a way to stop loving people, but as a way to finally stop losing yourself. Your peace cannot depend on someone else's behavior. That is a sentence that sounds simple when you first hear it, but if you truly sit with it, you begin to realize how deeply it challenges the way most of us live our lives. From the time we are young, we are conditioned to measure our emotional state based on how others respond to us. If someone praises us, we feel worthy. If someone ignores us, we feel invisible. If someone chooses us, we feel valuable. If someone walks away, we suddenly question our entire identity. Without realizing it, we slowly hand over the control of our emotional world to people who were never meant to carry that responsibility. And the most dangerous part is that we rarely notice when this happens. It creeps in quietly. One day you're simply caring about someone, and the next day your entire mood depends on whether they text back, whether they acknowledge your effort, whether they understand your intentions. Your peace becomes fragile because it is no longer anchored within you. It is floating in someone else's hands. Think about how many times your entire day has shifted because of someone else's behavior. Maybe someone you care about spoke to you in a harsh tone. Maybe a message you expected never arrived. Maybe someone didn't appreciate something you worked hard on. Suddenly, your mind starts spinning stories. You begin replaying conversations, searching for hidden meanings, wondering what you did wrong. Hours pass, sometimes days. And all of that emotional energy is being spent trying to interpret someone else's actions. The truth is, most people are simply living their own lives, dealing with their own struggles, fears, distractions, and responsibilities. They are not always aware of the emotional weight we attach to their behavior. Yet we give their words and actions enormous power over how we feel about ourselves. We allow their inconsistency to create storms inside us. And when your emotional stability depends on something so unpredictable, peace becomes almost impossible to maintain. The real shift begins the moment you recognize this pattern within yourself. Awareness is always the first step toward freedom. When you start observing your emotional reactions honestly, you may notice how quickly your peace rises and falls depending on what someone else does. A compliment lifts you, silence unsettles you, approval excites you, rejection wounds you. It becomes clear that the external world is constantly pulling your emotional strings. But here is the deeper truth. Emotional maturity begins when you stop expecting others to regulate your inner world. People will have good days and bad days. They will misunderstand you. They will disappoint you sometimes. They will behave in ways that reflect their own emotional state rather than your worth. When you internalize this understanding, you stop interpreting every behavior as a reflection of your value. Instead, you begin to see it as a reflection of their journey, their mindset, and their circumstances. There is a quiet strength that develops when you stop reacting to every shift in someone else's mood or attention. It does not mean you become cold or indifferent. In fact, it means you become more emotionally intelligent. You still care. You still listen. You still show kindness and love. But you are no longer emotionally shaken by every change in the environment around you. Your stability begins to come from something deeper. Your values, your self-respect, and your understanding of life. When someone appreciates you, you feel grateful but not dependent. When someone misunderstands you, you respond with clarity instead of insecurity. When someone leaves your life, you allow yourself to feel the sadness, but you do not let it destroy your sense of self. Your center remains intact because you have stopped outsourcing your emotional stability. This shift requires courage because it forces you to take responsibility for your own emotional well-being. It is much easier to blame others for how we feel. It is easier to say, "They made me upset," or "They ruined my day." But when you take full ownership of your emotional world, you realize something powerful. No one can truly control your peace unless you allow them to. Their actions may trigger emotions, but the way those emotions grow, settle, or transform within you is ultimately shaped by your awareness. Instead of reacting immediately, you pause. You breathe. You ask yourself whether this situation truly deserves the level of emotional energy you are giving it. Sometimes the most empowering response is simply choosing not to carry what someone else has dropped on your shoulders. Not every comment requires a defense. Not every misunderstanding requires a long explanation. Not every absence requires a painful story in your mind. Over time, when you practice this kind of emotional independence, something remarkable begins to happen. Life starts to feel lighter. The constant emotional turbulence begins to fade. You still experience joy, disappointment, excitement, and sadness, because those are natural parts of being human, but they no longer control your entire sense of peace. Your happiness is no longer a fragile glass that can shatter with someone else's words. Instead, it becomes a quiet inner foundation that remains steady even when circumstances change. Relationships also begin to transform in a healthy way. When your peace does not depend on someone's behavior, you interact with them from a place of genuine connection rather than emotional neediness. You appreciate people for who they are instead of demanding that they constantly validate your existence. And paradoxically, this kind of emotional stability often attracts deeper, more respectful relationships because people can feel the calm strength within you. There is also a spiritual dimension to this realization. When you stop tying your peace to other people's actions, you reconnect with something deeper within yourself. You begin to understand that your emotional state is not meant to be a constant reaction to the external world. It is meant to be guided by awareness, gratitude, and intention. You realize that peace is not something someone gives you. It is something you cultivate inside yourself through daily choices. You choose how long you hold on to a hurtful moment. You choose whether you replay a painful memory or release it. You choose whether you allow someone's temporary behavior to define your long-term emotional state. Each of these choices slowly shapes the quality of your life. The more you practice this awareness, the more resilient you become. And resilience is the quiet superpower that allows you to move through life with grace, even when things don't go the way you expected. When you reach this stage of understanding, emotional detachment stops feeling like distance and starts feeling like freedom. You are no longer chasing constant reassurance. You are no longer trying to decode every silence or explain every misunderstanding. You are simply living your life with clarity. You give your love generously, but you do not beg for it in return. You respect others, but you respect yourself enough to maintain your peace. And perhaps the most beautiful part of this journey is that it allows you to experience relationships more authentically. Instead of clinging to people out of fear, you connect with them out of choice. You appreciate their presence, but you do not collapse when they are absent. Your emotional world becomes rooted within you, steady and grounded, rather than floating in the unpredictable behaviors of others. And when your peace finally comes from within, instead of from other people's actions, you discover a truth that changes everything. The moment you stop giving others control over your emotional world is the moment you reclaim the deepest power of your life. The power to remain calm, centered, and whole no matter what the world around you chooses to do. Not everything deserves your emotional energy. This truth is simple, yet incredibly difficult for most people to practice. In a world where we are constantly connected, constantly informed, and constantly reacting, it becomes very easy to give pieces of our emotional energy to everything around us. A comment online, a stranger's opinion, a minor misunderstanding, a moment of criticism, suddenly our mind is consumed. We replay conversations, imagine arguments, and create stories about situations that may not even matter tomorrow. The problem is not that we care. Caring is part of being human. The problem is that we often give the same level of emotional attention to things that are temporary, insignificant, or completely outside our control. And when you spread your emotional energy too thin across everything, you slowly exhaust yourself without even realizing why. Think about how often your mind becomes occupied with things that have very little impact on your life's bigger picture. Someone says something slightly rude, and suddenly you spend hours thinking about what you should have said back. A person ignores your message, and your thoughts begin building explanations, assumptions, and doubts. A small inconvenience during the day turns into frustration that follows you into the evening. These moments may seem small individually, but together they drain your mental and emotional strength. Your mind becomes a place of constant reaction instead of conscious focus. What most people do not realize is that emotional energy works just like physical energy. If you use it carelessly throughout the day, by nightfall you feel mentally tired,